Welcome to Peculiar Tales, the show where we dive into the stranger things in history, urban legends, ghost stories, and anything else we find, well, peculiar. I'm Kristy.
And I'm Dawn. Before we start, I have a few questions. Have you ever thought you seen something and thought maybe you weren't sure?
Oh, 100%. I think everybody has where you're staring at something and you're not sure if you're seeing what you think you're seeing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay. And if you saw lights in the sky, would you go towards them?
I think it depends on what kind of lights, but maybe not. I
I
don't
think I
know.
would.
I think it would depend on the lights and probably where I was at. If I knew my surroundings, maybe.
I don't know. I feel like I would just go.
No.
And finally, would you tell anybody? Would you report it?
Yeah, absolutely. Be
Yeah?
like, that was weird. I don't know what that was, but it was weird.
I think I would tell, but I
Yeah.
would think real hard on who I would tell. Because, you could be labeled as somebody who maybe not of sound mind, or maybe they would think
Absolutely. But
you
I
just
mean,
are using your imagination. Maybe you're creeped out by your surroundings.
true enough. But I feel like if it was just some strange lights, I'd be like, yeah, I saw something really weird. I don't know what it was, but it was weird.
I get that. Well, this is exactly the decisions the airmen had to make while in the Rendlesham Forest in 1980. Airmen sworn to secrecy. They found themselves facing something that they didn't understand, something unidentifiable. The lights, the sounds, the out-of-the-world craft. There were metallic impressions in the ground, confusion, and questions that couldn't entirely be answered. And the beginning of a conspiracy that would last for decades. A mystery that seems to defy all reasons. Was this something that was to be considered a visitation from another being? Or something more? Something just beyond the reach of comprehension? Join us as we dive into the early hours of that cold December morning and the days that followed with all the strange events that led up to what is now known as the Roswell of Britain, the Rendlesham Forest Incident.
There were two military bases located at the Rendlesham Forest, Woodbridge and Bentwater. The bases were surrounded by isolation of the dark forest and farmlands. The bases were either having the men do drills or the men were busy maintaining them. You see, the base's purpose to this location was strategic because at the time the Cold War was going on.
It has been suggested that some individuals thought the locations were possibly to house nuclear weapons. The bases had fewer soldiers because of the time of year as well as the holiday. The Christmas party was set to happen on the 28th of December, and that meant that Christmas Day was quiet. On the night of Christmas 1980, going into the early hours of Boxing Day, December 26th, the security personnel posted at the lookout tower were waiting for the next shift to arrive so they could go back to base.
The atmosphere was cold, and the forest had been described as still. The fog was clinging to the trees and weaving through the trunks, as if the fog was alive and quietly moving around the forest. There were no sounds other than the crushing of snow under one's foot. At the east gate, in the early morning hours of December 26th, by most accounts the time was around 3 a.m., the security personnel at RAF Woodbridge Base had seen what has been described as bright and unusual. At first it was thought that maybe a plane had crashed. A call had been made by the security personnel, and 3 airmen were sent to the area, reported to start an investigation. There was John Burroughs, Sergeant Jim Peniston, and Edward Cabansag.
The 3 airmen drove together to the forest and then walked the rest of the way to the area that was thought as being the area with a possible crash site. The men first noticed a bright white light falling through the trees, possibly a crash of something. When the airmen approached closer, the men described a strange craft-like object. It was triangular and roughly 6 to 9 feet across in length. There was a bright light on the top and pulsing blue, yellow, and red lights around the craft. The object was said to be hovering just above the ground and was metallic and smooth. The air around the craft was statically charged and dense. When the men approached the craft, they said it was like it reacted to them. It slowly moved among the trees and gave a glow to the area. The craft then elevated and zigzagged through the trees and shot upwards with speeds that were unheard of, and it made no sounds.
When the craft had left the forest, it was once again eerily silent, except for the sound of the farm animals, which had been described as going wild or in a frenzy. The 3 men reported the incident and were said to be shocked.
Not long after 4 a.m., the local police were called to the scene, and it's been written that the only lights that had been seen were the lights from a lighthouse, the Orford Ness Lighthouse. It was 7.5 miles away, approximately a 20-minute drive. When the base officials returned to the site in the daylight hours, there were 3 triangular marks on the ground. There were scorch marks on nearby trees and radiation readings that were above normal. It was these physical traces that had become the most compelling evidence to the reportings. Fast forward to 10:30 a.m., and the police were called out again, this time to see the impressions, which at the time they thought were made by an animal. The descriptions that later followed seemed to be pretty specific and varied depending on the witnesses. Burroughs and Cabansag described seeing the bright moving lights, while Penniston had claimed to have touched the craft. Now, Penniston had also claimed that there were symbols etched on the craft that seemed to resemble hieroglyphic-like characters. Although the claims of touching the craft and seeing the symbols have been said that they were details that came later in years, and they are considered controversial.
The craft was, quote, glowing object with colored lights. Others said triangular or diamond-shaped, looking metallic, and Sergeant Jim Penniston said that it looked smooth, opaque, black glass. The size of the craft also changed, from being the size of a tank to 9 feet tall and wide. It was said there was no landing gear, but it was fixed on legs. Also, it was quiet, making no sound, and made the air seem statically charged.
December 28, 1980. Once again quiet. It has been described as unnervingly quiet. The forest was still. Somewhere beyond the tree line, a light metallic glow was pulsating, slow and continuous. The lights made long, what some have said, skeletal shadows in between the trees. The personnel at RAF Bentwaters walked into the cold of that night, and they had their flashlights and radios. The radios had been crackling with unfinished reports. Something had come back to that forest. Something that the men from the first night were unable to forget or even explain for that matter. Deputy Base Commander Charles Halt walked his team right into that forest. He had his cassette recorder clicking on with an eerie sound. The commander started to whisper into his recorder. "We're seeing strange lights in the woods. It's moving. It's blinking. This is unreal."
As the men continued through the cold, further into the darkness of Rendlesham, it has been said that the lights were darting between the trees. This night the lights were white, blue, and red, making no sound. The men felt like they were being watched. The animals made distress sounds and then went quiet. A beam sent down from above the trees. It was described as impossible, piercing, sharp, and narrow. Halt's voice was now trembling while he continued to record the events. "It's coming this way. It's coming this way." It was then claimed that the craft broke into 3 pieces, fragments if you will, 3 distinct lights. Each piece seemed to glide through the forest with ease, with intent. The men then claimed that there was another beam that was sent down over the weapons storage area at the back end of the base, as if the beam seemed to be examining the area.
And just as quickly as the whole thing started, all the lights disappeared. There was absolutely no trace that the event even took place, no sounds, and no smoke. The recorder was shut off, but the tape he made still is heard 46 years later. His voice shaky when the forest felt alive. The men went back to base, and it was very cold, and the sky now looked normal above Bentwater's base.
When Holt entered the security building, he put the recorder on the desk, rewound the tape, and pressed play. The room went quiet with the recordings that were heard. There it is again, red blinking, moving through the trees. Beams of light, coming down. This is getting strange. The recordings made the men in the room uncomfortable. Then came a moment where Holt's voice on the recording, unsteady, says, "It's coming towards us. It's..." And at that moment, static took over the recording. Some have said the static sounded rhythmic, almost patterned. Holt locked the recording away.
December 29. Airmen on duty that night reported a rhythmic pulsing in the tree line, like a heartbeat in the soil. Calls came on the radio about strange activity around the field. A small group of security personnel went out into that forest and described as a blackness in between the trees. It was quiet again and bitter cold. The only sounds was that of their boots crunching the snow under them as they walked.
When the lights appeared this time, it wasn't just in the sky. It was low and going between the trees. Red, blue, white. The lights were soft at first, and then became brighter. It has been claimed that the lights were circling the men as if they were being watched. The men were standing still. One light went upwards at a great speed, and it is said there was a faint afterglow that quickly disappeared. However, deeper into the forest, there was a continuous low hum that has been said as unplaced.
Someone in the group swore that they saw a shape materialize behind the mist. He said the shape was not solid or even defined. It was flickering in and out of sight. It was stated that the air pressure changed, animals scattered, and branches on the trees around were moving with no wind. Just then the clearing was lit up and the bright beam of light silent. There was no sound, no explosion. The light just as quickly faded from the clearing. When the light was gone, so was the shape that was seen. What was there, though, was the scorched impressions on the ground. They were shallow and geometric and precise.
The hum went away, and the forest was no longer unsettled. It was as if nothing had even happened. Again, the men felt like there was communication with something. Whoever or whatever visited the Rendlesham Forest that night left no debris and no proof it was there. The animals that had panicked earlier were now quiet, and the tree line was avoided by any patrol. Some felt that whatever was out there had indeed left something behind.
It was noticed that when the men in the group returned to base, they were tired and pale in complexion, and quiet, unusually quiet. Whispers turned into rumors, and the flashes in the sky, the beam of light over the weapon area, and objects that moved like nothing on earth. Some of the men could not sleep properly for what has been reported for days, and others flat out refused to go near that forest at night. Holt had protected the recorder, treating it as a piece of evidence. At times he would listen to portions of it for clarity of what happened, and then he'd lock it back up again. In private, what was said was several officers listened to the most disturbing, parts, they heard the pulses, the beams, and the static.
Following the 3 encounters, any airmen that had been involved in any of the nights, including the men from the first night, were individually debriefed. Physical evidence was collected. Soil from the ground where the triangle's indentations were. The radiation readings from Holt's night were given. The pictures that were taken that night and the morning after had been given as well. And lastly, Holt wrote an official memorandum. In this letter, he dated the events as the day after, such as the 26th was now the 27th. Some say because it was 2 weeks after, and some details may have escaped him.
January 13th, 1981. Charles Holt summarized the events. The first night's landing site, the second night's sightings, and his own encounter with the lights and the craft that reacted to the men. When the memo was completed, it was sent to the British Ministry of Defence. The memo was put away for years, and the public didn't know anything of it. The public was never told of any of this. The reason was said because there was no defense significance. But behind closed doors, rumors were said that internally, this was a serious matter. It has been said that memo leaked in 1983 because of the Freedom of Information Act. Almost immediately, Rendlesham was coined Britain's Roswell.
In the 80s and 90s, witnesses started to come forward with their own stories of those cold days at Rendlesham. People like Peniston and Burroughs. Peniston stated at the time of touching the craft, saying it was warm and triangular. Burroughs said he was missing time and had long-term health issues afterwards. Holt himself spoke out as well. He insisted that the event was real and that what was seen was not misidentified stars. You see, there was a control tower, and they too had found an unidentified something on their screens that they were tracking on the second night, as well as there was an astronomer that swore that the men saw was just stars in the sky and not lights.
From the 90s to the 2010s, the case was revisited, and Charles Holt signed sworn statements that he in fact did see beams of light near the weapons storage area. And when the Ministry of Defense released the files, well, they were said to be heavily redacted. All right, before we close the book on Rendlesham, what's the one question this whole incident keeps you wondering about?
How so many people could describe a similar event, have evidence of this event, and so many people still just brush it aside. Oh no, it's stars. Oh, stars dart in and out of trees in the forest, do they?
Okay, or the pulsing lights. Like,
right?
That's very prominent through this whole story, that each sighting, the first night, the second, there was lights.
That's what I'm saying. You had lights that were splitting up and going in different directions, moving way too fast, darting in and out of trees, pulsating.
And the air, they said that it was statically charged. Now, I don't know what that's like. I haven't experienced statically charged.
You've never felt statically charged air before?
I don't think so, no.
Oh, yeah, that's a weird feeling. Because you literally can feel your hair standing up, but not like in a goosebump way. Like
I see.
It's almost as if static is just pulling on the little hairs and you can feel it vibrating in the air.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, so then maybe I have felt that. But these are all pretty specific things these men reported. And again, can we just touch down on, in the beginning, I had said I would be cautious about who I would say what to, right? And I feel like these are men who took their job seriously. These are men that were in charge of keeping people safe. These weren't just people.
No.
These people were very serious, focused, driven.
To write statements about it and take recordings of it and pictures and all of this stuff, it meant that what they were doing was taking it very seriously, that something that shouldn't be there is there. Now, what it was, I guess that's to be determined. But the fact that people just brushed it off with things like, oh, it was stars, that's, I'm sorry, but that's crazy. You know
Please.
that's not stars that they're talking
I
about.
know. And once again, it'd be like, excuse me, ma'am. No. No, I
Right?
don't accept that answer. Can we go to something different? I agree with you on that. And it is considered to be the world's best documented cases of UFO possibilities.
Exactly it. I mean, okay, you could say hoax if you want to, but again, I go back to the fact that these
I
are
don't know.
military men. They're not looking for a hoax to get what fame? That's
Okay.
not what it is.
Again, focused men. These men are away from their families.
Mm-hmm.
It's Christmas time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think any of them are like, let's just do this? No.
Okay. Even if the first three guys, let's say, were like, hey, let's screw around and say we saw something, then that would be where that information ended. You know what I mean? There's no way you're convincing
Okay, but
someone higher up
okay, so
to lie.
even if we go with the it could have possibly been a hoax on that first night, do they just randomly carry radiation around? Do they just randomly have tools that will make indentations on the ground and scorch the trees at a certain level? That's a lot of effort on a cold night.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't buy that.
I just don't buy that even if they wanted to do that, that you could convince the people who followed to go along with it, to go 3 whole nights of this stuff.
I don't know what the rules are in military, but you'd almost think that if this was a hoax and you got caught, that's your military career being tainted,
I would think
possibly
so,
ended by this sort of nonsense.
right?
So I don't believe for a second that these men were just making it up for attention.
No,
No way. I don't believe
no,
that. You can hear the tape now online, right? Like
right.
decades later, you have this option to find it online and
Hmm.
hear it. As well as there's been books and documentaries, movies. I mean, the media has covered this 7 ways from Sunday.
Right.
And what's interesting is that not just the bases seen things, but regular people. Remember those farmlands we were talking
Hmm.
about? Well, those people living in the farmlands, they had their own sightings and they piped up. you
But
know?
this is what I'm saying though. How do you have so many people seeing similar things and then want to just brush it aside so easily? Now, again, what they saw, sure, you can argue what it was that they may have seen, but they saw something. People saw something that didn't make sense.
Okay, so their first reaction. Now, this is 1982. This isn't even like Roswell of 47. This is
Right.
1980. At least I think Roswell happened in 47. But this is 1980.
Yeah.
We are talking about there was significant growth
Yeah.
in what people believed in, what people saw, what people did.
Hmm.
I don't know. I feel like there was an opportunity instead of trying to bury it and say, oh, it was a lighthouse. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
know about you, but I can't see 20 minutes away on a drive. Like, I can't
No.
see the next town over. I'm sorry. There is no light possible that would make me see the next town over.
Well, and even if you could see the lighthouse from there, you would know that's the lighthouse. You would have seen it 100 times. It's not like the lighthouse moves.
I don't
It
know.
would be there. You would see it every night, and you'd be like, that's the lighthouse.
I have a harder time believing, personally, that you saw the light from a 20-minute drive distance away, but that these pulsing lights didn't happen. Now, like
Right.
I said a few moments ago, they had an opportunity here and they chose to squash it. They
Hmm.
chose to hide it. They were fearful.
Right.
But there was an opportunity, in my opinion, that they could be like, something was here and it was peaceful. Nobody got shot at. Nobody got sick.
Nobody got
Nobody
attacked.
died of
Well,
any.
the one did say he had long-term health issues after
Maybe,
touching
yeah,
it.
you're right. Okay, I take that back. But peaceful enough,
Yeah.
right? It didn't try to blow up the bases. Nothing like that, right? They had an opportunity to kind of like flip it with the audience in 1980 to say, hey, possibility here of this.
Right.
And can we just add that it seemed pretty damn peaceful? Like it's just a craft moving around.
Or even maybe doing some real investigating into it to try to figure out what it was. If you didn't want to believe that it was something from somewhere else, there was clearly something there, and maybe you should want to know what it was.
Even if you were to sit there and say, all right, I buy your theory, but what animal has those triangular marks? What animal, sir? Because if you're going to sit there and say there's triangular indentations in the ground in different spots, how is it that it's not all in a row, like when something's walking?
Right.
What, are they leaping? Are they leaping from side to side like they're Skip to Malooin? What animal made these triangular indentations?
Well, I'd be less concerned about animals and more concerned that it is the Cold War. And is this an opposing side? Do they have more military crafts that we're unaware of? Do they have things that we don't understand
Well, that
yet?
is a possibility that they could have thought that too, because the world did think they were housing those nuclear weapons.
And this is what I'm saying. Because of the Cold War itself, there was a lot of distrust, right, about what countries were capable of and what they had. So I would think that as a military base, you would have bare minimum, even if you were like, it's not aliens, you would have bare minimum been like, who has the technology to do something like this? And should we be investigating it?
Yeah, I suppose you're right, because there was clearly fear.
Right.
And again, I keep saying it, but 1980.
Right. Not that long ago.
No, it was in a time where technology was starting to take off with different things.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe you're right. Maybe they did think the possibility was there that it was an
Bare
opposing.
minimum, that's what I would have been concerned about. But it seems like they just tried to dismiss it away completely. Like, it was nothing. It was stars in a lighthouse. Don't
It's
you
frustrating,
think?
isn't it?
Yeah.
When you back on all these things. And this isn't the only episode where something in the past where why didn't you just say it?
Right?
Why didn't you just assume for a hot second that the public could comprehend it?
Right? You could have at least come out and this strange thing happened. We are investigating it. So far, these are working theories, or this is what we're concerned about, or whatever. But then again, I guess the argument can be made that everything they would have said, if it was incorrect, would have been used against them later. So
okay, well, it looks like they like to redact. So
redacted.
I feel like that wasn't, I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the end of our journey into the Rendlesham Forest Incident. A story with way more questions than answers. And the truth? Well, who really knows? The people who witnessed these events stand by what they saw during those cold December encounters. Whether it was military secrecy or something that has stepped into our world for a moment, or mere imagination, as some believe. We may never really know what happened there. Keep watching those night skies, and who knows what you might see. And as always, thank you for listening today. And if you love what you heard, follow our podcast so you never miss an episode. And until the peculiar calls for another tale, bye for now.